you start talking about really glamorous things like compassion, we kind of have to start with stuff that's a little bit more dry, like focus and discipline, right? And working with one's own suffering. These are important precursors. So with that said, I'll give you the same teaching I gave to her, because I said I would, and then we're kind of working backwards here, right? So the teaching on the four compassionate actions are pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying. In order to really understand these teachings, we have to understand ego's manipulations. We're going to talk about semantics a little bit later, so just kind of bear with me. But in order to kind of really grasp and understand these teachings, you really have to have some kind of practice of meditation to understand that the driving force behind these actions is coming from a place where you touch the space that's inside and outside, and that permeates everything, and that what's driving these actions is not driven by the petty desires of ego. We'll talk about that a little bit more as well. So pacifying is basically not doing anything. The situation resolves itself. Sometimes you don't do anything, right? You just kind of observe. The second one is enriching, where we add to the situation, right? We encourage, we give. The next one is magnetizing, where we pull resources, right? We negotiate. It might even extend into influencing. And then finally, there's destroying, where we have to cut an action. And this can be said to be one of the highest forms of compassion. Of course, I want to reiterate what I said at the beginning, and that was these things, they come from a place that's inspired by space, and we touch that space through, it's a process, but through meditation, we learn to touch that space, right? So what's driving these things, it comes from a place of balance, of non-ego. So how do we get to this space, right? How do we get to touching this space so that we can have harmonious responses, right? Bring balance to ourselves and to our environments and to those around us, right? Well, in the lineage that I study, we would start with shamatha, right? Shamatha it's I don't want to say beginners, because it is a beginner's form of meditation, but it's also a foundation. And you will find shamatha in most Buddhist, or some variation of shamatha in most Buddhist lineages. And this is the foundation. So shamatha is an unconditioned meditation. I have a part where we're going to talk about just about semantics. So we'll talk a bit more about what this unconditioned meditation is. But it basically has to do with having a good posture, focusing on the breath, and then acknowledging whatever distractions they may be, thoughts, emotions, whatever, and bringing the attention back to the breath without judgment and with gentleness. So that's basically shamatha. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about semantics. Right? The semantics is really important for starting at the beginning. Right? Actually, the original name of this talk was going to be semantics, but I changed it because I thought no one would come. Right? So let's talk a little bit about semantics, because we all kind of have our own definitions of things, right? So let's talk about Hinayana, right? So shamatha is something that's taught in the Hinayana. What is the Hinayana? Or it's basically the Theravadan Buddhism. What is that? That's in secular terms, it's the beginning, right? Hinayana, Theravadan, this corresponds with shamatha, that meditation technique I was just talking to you about, and all the theory that comes behind it, right? So shamatha, it seems quite simple on the facade, right? It always just posture, you focus on your breath, and then you return your attention to the breath, right? It seems very superficial, right, at the facade, but it's actually quite profound. and challenging. And there's a lot of theory and implications and benefits that come from it. Meditation. So in this context, we're talking about unconditioned meditation. So unconditioned meditation sorry, I wrote down some of these definitions because there's some things I don't want to screw up, and this is one of them. So it has to do with not having any goal in mind, right? When you're sitting, there's no sense of needing to purify anything, needing to get anywhere, needing to accomplish anything. It's a sense of really just being, right? And there's also a sense of fearlessness behind it as well, because there's nothing that's hidden either. When you're sitting, you're just like straight up observing, basically, in without just trying to see truth and reality like as it is, in good posture. So now I want to talk a little bit about how we define ego, at least in the lineage of Buddhism that I study. So why are we going through all of these? It's because semantics, like I said earlier, it's quite important. And it kind of goes back to what I talked about, the importance of the message that we have here about, just spreading love. And I think part of that is really about understanding who it is that we're listening to. Not just me as a speaker, but any speaker really, and understanding how they're using the words rather than how we might be, our definition of what those words might be. We could bicker all day, whether who has the correct definition, what's the correct, Webster dictionary definition of any of these words, right? But are we really accomplishing anything? I think the bigger idea here is that we're trying to understand whoever it is that we're listening to, and trying to understand the context and the background where they're coming from, rather than trying to project our own definitions, or maybe try to pigeonhole their definitions of these words into like how we understand them. And so it comes into a really deep listening, right? Understanding their background, where are they coming from? So with ego, how we talk about that in Buddhism, it's a little bit different than how we would talk about it in conventional psychology. It is the habitual attempt to solidify and defend a sense of me through grasping, aversion, and ignorance, especially the ongoing strategy of self-confirmation. So yes, so earlier when I talked about how we're kind of going in reverse. So when I was talking about having, the four compassion actions, we don't want them to come from a place that's like self-affirming. And what's the opposite of that? It's coming from a place where you touch the space, and the inspiration for that is coming from being in touch with that space that permeates everything. Okay, so let's talk about some of the qualities of unconditioned meditation. It's a direct resting in awareness, as it already is, without technique, effort, goal, or manipulation of experience. And at the same time, it is refraining from entertaining any thought. It is simply being. It is not a technique to create a special state. Nothing is improved or purified or transcended. Mind is allowed to be exactly as it is, vivid and awake. So there are lots of benefits to unconditioned meditation. There have been hundreds of studies conducted around unconditioned meditation and the benefits that they bring, right? So it's not confined to just what this seeming religion might present. And actually, Buddhism can be thought of more as a philosophy rather than a religion. The Dalai Lama has stated numerous times that the Hinayana or the Theravadan, it's a science of mind and ethics rather than a religion. That might not be said for the higher paths, the Mahayana and the Vajrayana, but for now we're just talking about the beginning. We're just talking about the Hinayana and the Mahayana. It's really a science of observation. So some of the benefits that come from unconditioned meditation are Improved sustained attention, improved selective attention, enhanced working memory capacity, improved executive function, faster perceptual processing, reduced mind wandering, reduced perceived stress, reduced anxiety symptoms, reduced depressive symptoms, improved emotional regulation, increased emotional resilience, reduced rumination, increased psychological wellness, increased self-reported life satisfaction, increased cortical thickness in attention and emotional related regions, reduced amygdala reactivity to stress, improved neural efficiency during attention tasks, slower age-related cortical thinning, reduced cortisol levels, lower resting blood pressure, improved heart rate variability, reduced inflammatory markers, improved immune response, improved sleep quality, reduced chronic pain perception, increased empathy and compassion, improved emotion recognition, reduced impulsivity, improved self-control, reduced addictive behaviors, reduced stress reactivity, reduced PTSD symptom severity, faster physiological recovery from stress. And there's more, but we'll just continue because to take my word for it, there's a lot of good stuff. The Shamatha project was a groundbreaking study that investigated the long-term effects of intensive meditation on the mind and brain conducted by Clifford Sarin and his team. The project revealed that participants who engaged in shamatha meditation experienced significant improvements in attention, cognitive control, and emotional regulation. The study also found reduced stress levels and enhanced well-being among meditators. Moreover, neuroimaging data showed structural changes in the brain, such as increased cortical thickness in areas related to attention and emotional processing. Overall, the shamatha project provides compelling evidence that meditation can foster lasting cognitive and emotional benefits. But moreover, I would feel like the biggest benefits that come from this practice has to do with honing focus, discipline, and working with one's own suffering. How are we to work with others skillfully if we don't have these as a foundation? Right? How can we work with the suffering of others when we haven't really looked at our own stuff? Right? Okay. So,
what's the benefit of you? I want to hear about you.
oh, that's next.
Oh, good.
It's coming right up. Yeah. Right. So my own personal story about shamatha and how I came across it. I spent a lot of time traveling in my life. Right out of college, my priority was I just wanted to see the world. So, so right after college, I went for a 3-year trip around the world. I went to Asia, I went to Australia, I went to India, North Africa, Europe. I loved Europe. And when I got to Europe, I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm staying here. I don't care if I do it illegally. I'm staying here, right? And so and then I had this life-changing mushroom trip, and then I realized, oh, I needed to go back and help my mom, who was not doing so well at the time in San Antonio, Texas. And so so I came back, right? And when I came back, it was the antithesis of my times in Europe, right? It was really like the wet blanket, right? It was just a vast contrast, and I was young and naive, and I was trying to keep my head above water. At the same time, I was trying to keep someone else from drowning. And I was living with someone who was in a psychologically dark place. So it wasn't really the best of skillful means. But anyway, I don't know, I guess my heart was in the right place, but I really thought, like I need something, I need something to keep me sane. And I had come across meditation on, traveling through Asia. I had even done a 10-day silent retreat. Some of you are probably familiar with the Vipassana or the 10-day silent retreats. Just as a curiosity, because I'm quite a curious person, and I want to try everything, right? And I thought these things were good ideas. I wasn't personally invested in them, because there wasn't a real need for them until this point. And then I thought, oh yeah, I need this, And so I started, I knew immediately, oh, I need to start meditating. I need to find some teachers. I need to find somebody, something. And so I started looking around, and I found a lineage. I found Shambhala lineage, which is the lineage I've studied with the most, right? And immediately upon my first visit to the local Shambhala center in San Antonio, I found shamatha, a technique that was immediately effective. I found literature that was living. They often say that the Dharma is living, because what you read so oftentimes it corresponds to what you're experiencing. This has happened to me numerous times. And then a sangha that was relatable, someone I could talk to this stuff about. And so since then, I've been pretty consistent with a meditation practice. It's been about 1 hour every morning of shamatha or some variation of shamatha for the past, it's been about 15 years now. And it's a game changer. There's been a lot of insights that have come from this. Now I feel that because I've been doing it every morning for so long, it just becomes not only habitual, but as a kind of like need. Like it would be like leaving the house without brushing my teeth in the morning if I missed a session. It would be like leaving the house without taking a shower and putting on a fresh pair of clothes. That's how fundamental I view it after having done it for so long. It's like cleaning your plate before you eat. It's like preparing for a class. It's just so foundational for starting the day. That's how I've come to see it. I want to read a few quotes from Chögyam Trungpa. Right. So our life is an endless journey. It is like a broad highway that extends infinitely into the distance. The practice of meditation provides a vehicle to travel on that road. Our journey consists of constant ups and downs, hope and fear, but it is a good journey. The practice of meditation allows us to experience all the textures of the roadway, which is what the journey is all about. In the practice of sitting meditation, you relate to your daily life all the time. Meditation brings our neurosis to the surface rather than hiding them at the bottom of our minds. It enables us to relate to our lives as something workable. Meditation is not a matter of trying to achieve ecstasy, spiritual bliss, or tranquility, nor is it attempting to be a better person. It is simply the creation of a space in which we are able to expose and undo our neurotic games, our self-deceptions, our hidden fears and hopes. Meditation is somewhat designed to experience life as it is. Meditation isn't particularly a big deal, so you shouldn't make a big deal about what happens in your meditation. It is part of your daily existence. Meditation practice is a way of developing clarity, which allows us to see the precision of daily life situations as well as our thought process so that we can relate with both of them fully and completely. And that's how I see it, is it's a kind of vehicle in order to experience life fully and properly. Meditation, when you start to really practice it and study it, it becomes like a rabbit hole that there's so much to it, and it leads into deeper insights. And one of those insights for me has been, I hesitate to say the realization, but I mean like part realization of the Bodhisattva vows, which are vows you take further along the path, where basically you dedicate your life to the benefit of others, right? So there's a kind of truth, at least that I was able to see in that is the purpose of my life anyway. And it becomes very like evident. And maybe some of you already know this, or maybe or see this. But this is something that becomes very clear with this practice and where it leads to. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about post-meditation. So this is meditation, and what we do post-meditation is also very important. We meditate in order to cultivate that sense of mindfulness. And I wouldn't say it's for the end result of, because that in itself is already kind of the end result, but it's kind of also for what we do after we're sitting, right? That's the post-meditation. We hopefully are bringing some of that mindfulness in with us to what we're doing when we're walking around, right? When we're living, right? So it's manifested in my life as advocating for eating a more vegetarian diet, for being more mindful of my carbon footprint, for being more mindful of how much plastic and styrofoam that I'm using, for using a credit union and not a big bank, and then for not supporting big box industries when possible. All right, so now I'd like to talk a little bit about experts in these different fields. They're not Buddhist. I don't think they are. They might be. But I think their approach to these different kinds of post-meditation actions is positive. It's beneficial. It's beneficial for people just to, if you don't already know it, to just be reminded of. Michael Pollan is an American journalist, professor, and lecturer at Harvard University, and was the author of Omnivore's Dilemma. He suggests buying less and to reduce waste, choosing quality over quantity, and educating yourself about food origins. He recommends shopping at farmers markets, avoiding processed foods, and being skeptical of food marketing. Overall, his message is eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Bea Johnson is a Franco-American author and pioneer of the zero waste lifestyle, developed the 5 R's framework to guide individuals towards sustainable, low waste existence. The 5 R's are refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot, in that order. Recycling is not the answer. There are many flaws with recycling. I suggest watching Bea Johnson's TED Talk about the 5 R's. In The Banks We Deserve, Oscar Abello highlights that community banks and credit unions play a crucial role in promoting sustainability and addressing social challenges. He mentions that the consolidation of banks into large institutions has social costs. It reduces access to capital for historically marginalized people and businesses, making it harder to address issues like racial justice, affordable housing, and climate change. Major banks like JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Citigroup rank among the top lenders to coal, oil, and gas. Elisa Gravitz, president and CEO of Green America, says using a credit card from a bank that invests heavily in fossil fuels means your everyday purchases are indirectly funding climate-damaging projects. Green America encourages choosing credit cards that align with ethical and environmental values. They recommend cards from community banks or credit cards. Green America Visa card helps support clean energy, regenerative agriculture, and fair labor practices. This way, every purchase contributes to positive social and environmental impacts. Green America also talks about mindful investing as part of aligning your money with your values, encouraging people to use socially responsible investing strategies so their investments support people on the planet rather than harming them. They defined social responsible investing, or ESG, as integrating your values into your investment decisions by choosing companies and funds with positive environmental, social, and governance practices. So one of the major ways that I contribute in this way was the amount of plastic that we use in styrofoam really hits home for me. And so I had talked a little bit about Bea Johnson, and she's like a role model for me. She's one of the pioneers of the zero waste lifestyle. And so I'm very particular about trying to eliminate as much plastic as I use. Of course, it's virtually impossible to completely not use plastic. And so I've done different projects throughout the years, including creating eco bricks. But I won't go into that because it's its own thing. But now I create eco cushions with my non-recyclable plastics, which is what this is. Basically, this is a cushion that I use for meditation. I don't acquire very much plastic, but when I do, I turn it into cushions, and then eventually I just give them away. But anyway, just one example of how to bring that mindfulness that we cultivate in our meditation to the post-meditation. And so I gave several examples of just, I mean, there's a lot of things to be mindful of, because it's so easy to create harm. It's so easy to create harm. So now I'd like to finish on this. Imagine how different the world would be and this country would be if people paid as much attention to how they consume as they do to pursuing pleasure and convenience. So how much time do we have left? 5 minutes? Okay. I'd like to do a short practice, a short sitting practice of shamatha, show you guys how it is. We'll do the 5 minutes. And then if there, we can just do a Q&A maybe at the very end when we're going for our food and stuff. All right, so here we go. The three aspects are the posture, the breath, and the distractions, the thoughts, right? So with the posture, since we're all in chairs, we want to make sure that our feet are flat on the floor. Our knees, they don't have to be touching, but they're relatively close together. Our hands are on our laps, so we have a straight spine. If it's possible, try to avoid using the back of the chair. If that's not possible, then go ahead and use the back of the chair. But the idea is we kind of support our own bodies with our own spines. The spine comes all the way to the neck and to the head, so this places the gaze out into the horizon. And then we just drop the gaze onto the floor about 6 feet in front of us, and we're looking at an area. We're not looking at anything specific. That tends to promote thought. The tongue touches the palate right behind the front two teeth, and the mouth is slightly open. So this is our good posture. Just try to remember it, as it's quite easy to let it go. Then we move on to the object of focus, which is the breath. So we breathe deeply into the diaphragm, in and out of the nose. And we put all of our attention on the out breath. The in breath is used as a gap. And then again, we put the attention on the out breath, and then we repeat. If there's any thoughts that come up during these next few minutes, we can just acknowledge that we're thinking. And without criticism and with gentleness, and those are the key words here, we return our attention back to the breath. Thank you.